Hello, you're watching News 9 Live. It's been 56 days of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. We'll bring you the latest updates in a bit.
The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
It's now the 56th day when the conflict between Israel and Hamas began, which began on 7th of October. These are the latest updates from the war front. Israel has accused Hamas of violating the expired truce, leading to the resumption of combat in Gaza. 8 more Israeli hostages have been freed from Gaza on Thursday. Israeli authorities say that they have released 30 Palestinian prisoners in return. U.S. Secretary of State has met with Israeli and Palestinian leaders. Houthis to resume military operations against Israel if latter continues with the war. Over 14,800 people, including more than 6,000 children, have been killed in the war so far. The truce between Israel and Hamas expired with neither side announcing a deal to extend it. An hour before the truce was scheduled to end, Israel intercepted a rocket fired from Gaza. On the other side, Hamas-affiliated media reported sounds of explosions and gunfire in the north of the Palestinian enclave. The Israeli military stated that further sirens warning of rocket attacks sounded again in Israeli areas near Gaza minutes before the red line. Heavy Israeli firing was reported across Gaza and Rafah near the border with Egypt. Hamas has violated the operational pause, and in addition towards Israeli territory, the IDF has resumed combat against the Hamas terrorist organization in Gaza. That's the latest statement on the platform X, earlier called tweet. This is from the IDF, or the Israeli Defense Forces. Yet again, Hamas violated the operational pause, they said. Moving on, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog on Thursday to discuss the ongoing truce between Israel and Hamas. Among other developments, Blinken said a temporary truce between Israel and Hamas had produced results, and the United States hoped it shall continue. Blinken also added that Washington was focused on helping to secure freedom for hostages taken to Gaza during the 7th of October attack. Herzog informed Blinken that about 150 hostages remain in Gaza. Their meeting in Tel Aviv took place on a morning when 2 Palestinian attackers opened fire at a bus stop during rush hour at the entrance to Jerusalem, killing at least 3 people and wounding 8 others. Both Blinken and Herzog condemned the attack.
Well, again, unfortunately, as we are meeting now, there are casualties in a serious terror attack in the entrance to Jerusalem, our capital. 2 terrorists have attacked innocent civilians waiting to be picked up to go on their day's work. And we have casualties, we have loss of life, and I would like to express my heartfelt condolences to the families, and of course to pray for the swift recovery of the wounded. This is another example of the situation we're in, the endless war that we are fighting against terror organizations, especially Hamas, in these very complicated and challenging times. I thank you for coming here. As always, you've been expressing the support of the United States, the President, administration, and I must say on behalf of the American people at large, so I thank you very much. We are working and praying and demanding the immediate release of all the hostages, and I thank the United States of America for the immense work it is devoting to the release of the hostages. There are still around 150 hostages who are there in Hamas hands in Gaza.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. This is my fourth visit to Israel since October 7th. And as you said, we're reminded yet again by the events in Jerusalem today of the threat from terrorism that Israel and Israelis face every single day. And like you, my heart goes out to the victims of this attack. I believe one person lost life, maybe as many as 3. We're thinking of them, we're thinking of their families, their loved ones, and we mourn their loss just as we mourn the loss of any innocent life. From day one, we have been focused relentlessly on trying to secure the release of hostages from Gaza and from Hamas. And we have seen over the last week the very positive development of hostages coming home, being reunited with their families, and that should continue today.
Meanwhile, Blinken also met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday in Jerusalem. The U.S. Secretary of State visited Jerusalem for the 3rd time since the commencement of the war.
Welcome. Secretary and I had an opportunity to begin the discussion, and there are many issues that we want to talk about. So I want to express our appreciation for your support from the beginning. Presidents, your personal, your delegation, and the war aims of eliminating Hamas and releasing, securing the release of our hostages. You've been very, very helpful. We appreciate it deeply. We'd like to talk to you about the next phase. So that's a summary of what we'd like to talk about and began talking about.
Earlier on Thursday, a total of 8 Israeli hostages were released by Hamas as part of the temporary ceasefire deal. Israel freed 30 Palestinian prisoners in the early hours of Friday under the truce deal in return. Since the truce agreement on 24th of November, 110 hostages have been released, including 80 Israelis. The majority of the 30 non-Israeli hostages released were from Thailand, and they were freed under a separate agreement. Meanwhile, Israel has released 240 Palestinian prisoners in exchange. The UN Commission investigating war crimes in the Israel-Hamas conflict shall focus on sexual violence by Hamas during the 7th October attack on Israel. Navi Pillay, the Commission's chair, plans to launch an appeal for evidence and shall pass it on to the International Crime Court. Israel's lack of cooperation poses a challenge, with the country citing an alleged anti-Israel bias. Despite this, Pillay has collaborated with ICC prosecutors and condemned Israel's response to the 7th October attacks. The Commission also prioritizes investigating the killing of reporters during the conflict, including Reuters journalist Issam Abdullah.
But I was very impressed with the deputy prosecutor's emphasis on how seriously she wishes to investigate the incidents of sexual violence, the complaints coming from Israel. Well, self-defense doesn't apply here because Gaza is not a state. I agree, it's absolutely shocking the numbers of people that have been killed and continue to face the risk of starvation, killings, and so on, because the bombings and attacks have not stopped.
And in other international stories, the US has welcomed the announcement of a probe by India into allegations related to the foiled attempt to kill Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannoon. Commenting on the indictment of an Indian national allegedly involved in the plot, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that the Indian probe was, within quotes, good and appropriate.
Finally, with regard to India, first, this is an ongoing legal matter, so you'll understand I can't comment on it in detail. I can say that this is something we take very seriously. A number of us have raised this directly with the Indian government in past weeks. The government announced today that it was conducting an investigation, and that's good and appropriate, and we look forward to seeing the results.
White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby emphasized the gravity of allegations.
India remains a strategic partner, and we're going to continue to work to improve and strengthen that strategic partnership with India. At the same time, we take this very seriously. These allegations and this investigation, take it very seriously. And we're glad to see that the Indians are too, by announcing their own efforts to investigate this. And we've been clear that we want to see anybody held, that's responsible for these alleged crimes to be held properly accountable.
However, in the entire matter, it seems like it's American hypocrisy when it comes to the matter of terrorism. The New York Times has published an article where it calls Pannoon a Sikh activist. This kind of language manipulation reveals how the West sees only an attack on their regime as an act of terrorism, but dismisses threats to the national security of other countries, downplaying them as acts of political activism. If Pannoon is an activist, then one could easily say that perhaps Osama bin Laden was also an activist. Media outlets, especially one of NYT's stature, also have an editorial responsibility to be objective and relay all sides of the story, and should have perhaps labeled Pannoon better, given that he has been declared a terrorist by India. Throughout its history, the United States has used its military and covert operations to overthrow or prop up foreign governments in the name of preserving US strategic and business interests. From Afghanistan to Cuba to Iran to Nicaragua to Guatemala, the US has played a part almost in every corner of the world. And in some pleasant news, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Dubai, where he is scheduled to participate in the COP28 meeting. In addition to addressing COP28, he shall engage in 3 high-level side events, 2 of them hosted by India. Prime Minister Modi was welcomed by an enthusiastic set of Indians in Dubai. Those are some of the Indian dances that are being displayed even as the Prime Minister arrived in Dubai. So you can see it's a mixture of Mohiniyattam, of Bharatnatyam as well as Kathak. So there Indian women welcoming their Prime Minister Modi for the COP28 meeting in Dubai. What a wonderful way to welcome the Prime Minister. Meeting all the Indians who gathered to welcome the Indian Prime Minister in Dubai. Narendra Modi is there to attend COP28 and he's wading through thousands of Indians who are enthusiastic with the tricolour in their hands and of course chanting Modi, Modi. There you saw Narendra Modi actually blessing the young men in the crowd even as he wades through thousands of people lined up to welcome Narendra Modi to Dubai. The first event, co-hosted by India and the UAE, focuses on the Green Credit Program initiated by the Ministry of Environment in October. Another side event, co-hosted by India and Sweden, shall mark the launch of Lead IT 2.0, a leadership group of energy transition. This collaborative effort, initiated in the year 2019, aims to accelerate the industry transition to net zero emissions by fostering collaboration between the public and private sectors. The Prime Minister shall also participate in a high-level event titled Transforming Climate Finance. The COP28 Climate Summit commenced on Thursday and emphasizes on the need for nations to swiftly reduce emissions and phase out fossil fuels. Prime Minister Modi is expected to return to India later on the evening of Friday, as stated by Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra during a briefing on Thursday. Those are the live shots of the COP28 meeting for which Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, is in Dubai. You can see those are the live shots being greeted by dignitaries in Dubai. Prime Minister, apart from this, has several other events also to attend to. The COP28 meeting is now going on in Dubai, which will speak about the need for nations to swiftly reduce emissions and phase out fossil fuels. Visuals of the Prime Minister at the COP28 event in Dubai. COP28, as you well know, is a collection gathering of nations who discuss about how to reduce emissions and phase out fossil fuels by several nations. A very, very important meeting indeed. And also Narendra Modi later shall participate in 3 more events which are of high importance. There you see Narendra Modi, who shall of course return to India on the evening of Friday, as briefed by the Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra during a briefing on Thursday. At COP28 in Dubai, nearly 200 nations converge, each with its unique agenda. Let's take a look at the key players and their respective objectives.
Each country has its own agenda for the nearly 200 nations gathering at COP28 in Dubai. And finding consensus is a challenge, as UN climate negotiations need unanimous support to pass. Here are some of the climate summit's main players and what they're looking for. China, the world leader in both clean and dirty energy. It's responsible for 30% of annual global emissions, making it the world's biggest greenhouse gas emitter. But it also has more renewable energy capacity than anywhere else. China has been feeling the impacts of climate change through heat waves, floods, and extreme drought. Despite having the world's second largest economy after the US, it sees itself as a developing nation in climate talks and argues wealthy, developed nations like the US should move first and fastest in policy and finance. It's part of the bloc of basic countries alongside South Africa, Brazil, and India, who argue the same. The United States is the world's second largest emitter. It comes to COP28 a year into rolling out a $369 billion plus subsidy package for electric vehicles and other green products. Its Inflation Reduction Act is expected to triple the country's clean energy capacity by 2030. But U.S. delegates will face pressure at COP28 after Washington pledged no new climate cash to the United Nations this year. It supports a COP28 deal to phase out CO2-emitting fossil fuel use, despite being the world's biggest oil and gas producer. The 27-country European Union is among the most ambitious. The bloc, along with the US, is pushing to triple renewable capacity. It also aims to end new coal-fueled power plants, phase out fossil fuels, and power electricity grids with renewable sources in the 2030s. African countries are pushing for climate finance to speed up green energy projects. But not everyone's on the same page. Some, like Kenya, Ethiopia, and Senegal, have backed calls for phasing out fossil fuel production. Others, like Mozambique, want to develop their reserve of gas to capitalize off European gas demands. But they do agree that any deal on phasing out fossil fuels must allow poor nations to develop reserves in the short term to alleviate energy poverty.
At the UN Climate Summit, a significant achievement as delegates agreed on establishing a fund to aid vulnerable nations in managing the expenses of climate-induced disasters. The agreement, a result of extensive negotiations preceding COP28's opening ceremony in Dubai, involves contributors totaling just over $300 million, including a substantial pledge of $100 million from the United Arab Emirates. Listen in.
Hearing no objections, it is so decided.
The UN Climate Summit clinched an early victory on Thursday, with delegates adopting a new fund to help vulnerable nations cope with the cost of climate-driven disasters. The deal was adopted following the COP28 opening ceremony in Dubai and already follows many months of negotiations. But some groups were cautious, noting there were still unresolved issues, including how the fund would be financed in the future. The United Arab Emirates will contribute $100 million to the pot, along with other countries contributing a total of just over $300 million. Germany pledged $100 million and the United States $17.5 million, with hopes the amount would build to a substantial sum. The early breakthrough on the damage fund, which poorer nations have demanded for years, could help grease the wheels for further compromises. Earlier in the day, COP28 President Sultan Al Jaber, who is also the CEO of the UAE's national oil company, opened the summit urging countries and fossil fuel companies to work together to meet global climate goals. Al Jaber aimed to strike a conciliatory tone following months of criticism over his appointment as the head of COP28.
Let history reflect the fact that this is the presidency that made a bold choice to proactively engage with oil and gas companies. We had many hard discussions. Let me tell you, that wasn't easy. But today, many of these companies are committing to zero methane emissions by 2030 for the first time. And now, many national oil companies have adopted net zero 2050 targets for the first time. And I'm grateful that they have stepped up to join this game-changing journey. But I must say, it is not enough. And I know that they can do much more.
Over the next 2 weeks, governments will also debate whether to agree, for the first time, to phase out the use of CO2-emitting coal, oil and gas globally, the main source of emissions. Also on the agenda is what's known as the global stocktake. This is when countries assess their progress in meeting global climate goals. The main one being the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to well below 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 2 degrees Celsius.
By the end of 2023, global warming is projected to reach approximately 1.4 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, marking a significant deviation and setting a new record, states the World Meteorological Organization in the Provisional State of the Global Climate Report, which was released on Thursday. The report underscores the urgency for world leaders grappling with the phase-out of fossil fuels at the UN Climate Summit COP28 in Dubai. While 2023 is poised to be the warmest year on record, it doesn't necessarily imply an immediate breach of the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold outlined in the 2015 Paris Agreement. However, the report serves as a foreboding glimpse into the potential consequences of surpassing 1.5 degrees with notable impacts, including record low Antarctic sea ice, significant glacial loss in Swiss glaciers, and extensive wildfires in Canada. The findings emphasize the critical need for sustained efforts to mitigate climate change. The report anticipates potential worsening in 2024 due to the peaking impacts of the El Niño climate pattern. In an interview with the New York Times, Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has emphasized that China's leadership is currently grappling with significant internal challenges, making the prospect of an invasion of Taiwan less likely. Despite China's heightened military pressure on Taiwan over the past 4 years, Tsai pointed out that China has numerous pressing domestic issues to address. Tsai reiterated that Taiwan's future should be determined by its people. He also raised concern that China may attempt to interfere in Taiwan's presidential and paramilitary elections scheduled for 13th of January. Starting 1st of December, citizens of both China and India can enjoy visa-free entry into Malaysia for up to 30 days, as announced by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim at the People's Justice Party Congress. Malaysia's Home Affairs Ministry confirmed the visa exemptions until the 31st of December 2024. China and India rank as Malaysia's 4th and 5th largest tourist markets. Recent government data reports that Malaysia welcomed 9.16 million tourists between January and June, with 2,083,885 alone from India. In a move similar to Malaysia, Thailand, a neighboring country heavily reliant on tourism, has also waived of visa requirements for Chinese as well as Indian nationals. Additionally, Sri Lanka's cabinet approved the visas for individuals from India, China, Russia, Malaysia, Japan, Indonesia and Thailand as a pilot project until 31st of March 2024. Elon Musk refuses reconciliation with advertisers who left X over anti-Semitic content, bluntly bashing them. Disney chief Bob Iger singled out among those who pulled out ads. Musk, facing backlash, shows no deterrence, stating X's fate rests with advertiser boycott. Take a look.
Elon Musk isn't about to make up with advertisers. In a fiery interview Wednesday at a New York Times event, he cursed at firms who quit social network X over anti-Semitic content. He told such brands to go F themselves. And he appeared to single out Disney chief Bob Iger as one target. The company was among those to pull all ads on X after Musk posted in support of a user who repeated an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Speaking earlier at the same event, Iger said that association with X was not a positive one for us. Other firms, including Warner Bros. Discovery and Comcast, have also withdrawn marketing. On Wednesday, Musk bristled at suggestions that he was anti-Semitic, but did offer a note of contrition. He described his post as the worst he had made in a long history of foolish tweets. But one marketing consultant said his new tirade would be the closing chapter for brands doing business with X. Musk does not appear deterred. He says that if X fails because of an advertiser boycott, then so be it. Let the chips fall where they may, he said Wednesday. X is, however, suing the Media Matters organization, which has claimed that ads on the social network are appearing next to content promoting Nazism.
Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, has taken action to shut down 5 China-based influence campaigns on its platform this year. These campaigns aim to exploit divisions within U.S. politics as several significant elections approach worldwide, including the upcoming U.S. presidential race. Meta anticipates the possibility of new campaigns aiming to manipulate genuine political discourse in order to stoke tensions in the countries they target. Now, Meta has taken down 5 Chinese networks of fake accounts in the year 23, the most of any country this year. That's a significant increase if you look from 2019, when Meta first removed a campaign based in China. More details on your screen on how Meta took down these Chinese accounts. Moving on, the Defence Acquisition Council has shown the green light to a major defence procurement plan. Chaired by Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, the DAC has approved the acquisition of 97 additional Tejas Mark 1A fighter jets, costing 66,000 crores. Notably, this is on top of the 83 jets which are already ordered and expected to be in February 24 from the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. The DAC has also sanctioned 156 light combat helicopters at a cost of 53,000 crores. On the ground, the DAC cleared the procurement of 400 towed military artillery guns, at the cost of 9,900 crores, following a previous approval for 307 such guns in March. Moreover, the DAC's acceptance of necessity has extended to anti-tank munitions capable of neutralizing tanks and armored personnel carriers. The AON has covered the procurement and upgrade of T-90 tank gadgetry along with the acquisition of anti-ship missiles for the Navy's surface platform. Impressively, 98% of the proposed acquisitions totaling 2.20 lakh crores shall be sourced domestically, underlining a commitment to bolstering the country's defense capabilities through indigenous production. Following an advisory from the centre regarding a mysterious pneumonia outbreak in China, Kerala has bolstered surveillance measures. The Chief Minister has assured that the state hasn't observed any abnormal surge in respiratory cases in the last 3 months. The Union Health Ministry issued an advisory to all the states and union territories to review and enhance public health and hospital readiness against respiratory illnesses as a precautionary measure. Notably, 6 Indian states, those being Rajasthan, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Karnataka, Haryana and Tamil Nadu, have been placed on red alert amidst the ongoing situation. Let's listen in to what the authorities have to say about this illness.
China development, I told our officers to just look into all that, and then we also received guidelines from Government of India. So now we have told all our hospitals to be prepared to just check the preparation, do some mock drills, see if the availability of oxygen, beds, PPE kits, all those things should be there, and just keep a lookout. Right now there's nothing to panic or there's no such situation, but till further guidelines from Government of India we will wait, but we're just keeping ourselves prepared and letting people know about the situation, and general public also we warn them that just be aware of this and be careful.
அந்த வகையில் இந்த மாதமும் கூட டிசம்பர் மாதம் இன்னமும் 5 வாரங்கள் இந்த மருத்துவ முகாம்கள் தொடர்ந்து நடத்தப்படவிருக்கிறது. வருகிற சனிக்கிழமை முதல் அந்த 2ஆம் தேதி ஒரு முகாமும், 9ஆம் தேதி ஒரு முகாமும், 16ஆம் தேதி ஒரு முகாமும், 23ஆம் தேதி ஒரு முகாமும், 30ஆம் தேதி ஒன்றும். இதேபோல் ஒவ்வொரு நாளும் 2000க்கும் மேற்பட்ட முகாம்கள் நடத்தப்படும். இதிலும் கூட இந்த வருகிற 5 வாரங்களில் இன்னும் ஒரு 10,000 முகாம்கள் நடத்தப்படும். ஆக ஒரு பருவமழையில் 20,000க்கும் மேற்பட்ட மருத்துவ முகாம்கள் நடத்தப்பட்டது என்பது மருத்துவத்துறை வரலாற்றில் இதுதான் முதல் முறை.
The Bengaluru police responded to bomb threats sent via email to 13 schools alleging the presence of explosives on their premises. Students and staff were evacuated as authorities swiftly responded, initiating searches across schools. Bomb disposal squads were dispatched to locations in Whitefield, Koramangala, Basvesh Nagar, Yalahanka and Sadashiv Nagar.
ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಜಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ನಮ್ಮನೆ ಫೋಟೋ ತೋರಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. Then I just now I came and asked my wife. I said, "Good morning."
Moving on, survivors fleeing violence in Sudan's West Darfur recounted harrowing experiences of rape by armed fighters disguised as RSF military attire or the traditional robes and turbans worn by Arab militiamen. These assaults occurred during targeted attacks on El Geneina city. Listen in to this report.
A 19-year-old abducted and raped by 4 men over 3 days. A 28-year-old women's rights activist seized from her doorstep and raped while being held for hours in an abandoned house. A 24-year-old raped by armed men in her home just a few feet from her mother.
They said, "We'll kill her if you don't give yourself to us." I sacrificed myself and said, "Whatever you want to do to me instead of killing my mother."
These are among 11 young women interviewed by Reuters who say they were sexually assaulted amid a war in Sudan by members of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces and allied Arab militiamen. They are all from the non-Arab Masalit ethnic group, which has been targeted in Sudan's West Darfur by the Arab-dominated RSF and its allies. At a refugee camp in neighbouring Chad, this 27-year-old medical assistant said she had been sheltering at a displacement camp in the West Darfur city El Geneina when men in RSF uniforms arrived and shot several Masalit men. They recognised her as the wife of a Masalit community activist and asked his whereabouts. She told them she didn't know.
One beat me while I was lying on the floor. They assaulted me and I kept screaming. While I was screaming, they stuffed a scarf in my mouth so I couldn't scream. After that, one held my arms. There were about 5 of them. Some were beating me. 3 were assaulting me. After the 3, I lost consciousness. I didn't know where I was, and I couldn't see or hear.
El Geneina was at the centre of a surge in ethnically targeted violence from late April, just after Sudan's conflict began, to mid-June. Survivors described civilians being slaughtered, picked off by snipers, mowed down by automatic weapons, and burned alive in their homes. In early November, the RSF and its allies waged another wave of attacks in the city. The women in this report were interviewed in the Chadian border town Adre in July and August. Reuters was unable to independently corroborate all the details of their accounts, but in many instances family members and friends confirmed elements of their stories. All 11 said the men who attacked them wore either RSF military uniforms or the robes and turbans commonly worn by Arab militiamen.
He threatened me with a weapon and told me, "Are you going to take off your clothes or not?"
This 25-year-old says she told her assailants she would rather die. Instead, they said, they would kill her brothers.
At that point, I surrendered.
Nearly all of the women interviewed said they were raped by multiple men, and all said it was at gunpoint. 6 said their attackers mentioned their Masalit identity or used ethnic slurs for the Masalit and other darker-skinned non-Arabs. Emir Massa Asil, a tribal leader in El Geneina, has dismissed the rape allegations as empty lies. He leads one of the largest Arab tribes in West Darfur, a group from which many RSF leaders hail. Arab tribal traditions prohibit sexual assault and bar marrying Masalit. In a phone interview, Asil said if he couldn't bring himself to marry a Masalit woman, why would I take her by force? He also blamed the Masalit for starting the conflict. The RSF didn't respond to detailed questions for this report. It has said of the broader conflict in Sudan that it opposes any abuses against civilians. Speaking about the Darfur region, the paramilitary group's deputy head, Abdul Rahim Dagalo, said this in November.
The RSF will not provide support to perpetrators, but will respond swiftly and resolutely. We assure our firm readiness to collaborate with the Investigations Committee to present any individuals involved in violations to fair and just sentences.
The sexual assault reports come amid war in Sudan between the army and the RSF. More than 10,000 people have been killed and 6 million displaced. The United Nations has said that across Sudan it has received credible reports of conflict-linked sexual violence involving more than 100 victims. But at the camp on Chad's border, survivors are having to live with the physical and emotional scars of their ordeal. This woman says she was taken to a room and raped by 2 men. She tries to be patient, she says, and not show her emotions, so people won't look at her as a victim and judge her behind her back. But under the surface, she says she is very depressed. Sometimes she adds, "I feel like my life has ended."
Russia's Supreme Court has labelled LGBTQ activists as extremists, prompting fears amongst representatives of the gay and transgender community of potential arrests and also legal actions. The court decreed that the international LGBT public movement and its subdivisions were extremists, imposing a ban on their activities within Russia.
Discrimination, violence, or exclusion or stigmatization of one sector of society is corrosive for all of society. What this means for the LGBT community is its further repression of their fundamental rights. We've already seen the banning of so-called gay propaganda in Russia, and now any advocacy in favor of the rights of people who have a certain sexual orientation has effectively been criminalized. It's also very unclear what is defined as international LGBT movement. So it also leaves the law open to abuse. It leaves it open to a lot of uncertainty for people on what could land them in jail and what is permissible. Not only the High Commissioner, but various UN human rights mechanisms have also interacted with the Russian authorities on this. Unfortunately, the situation is just going from bad to worse. And we are getting reports that this is severely affecting people's ability to access services, people's ability to be able to advocate. Now, this is not just about sexual orientation, as in what people do in their private lives, in their bedroom. This is about the right to access healthcare. This is about the right to employment. It's about the right to many fundamental human rights that will now be scuppered because people will effectively have to go into hiding.
That's all we have in this bulletin. For all the news and analysis, keep watching News9 Live.
चलो जी कौनी मिले वोट जी
गाली भड़काने वाली स्पीच हो रही है।